I have been slacking on Scotch whiskies, so it's time for me to explore and broaden my horizons. Let's see if the Tomatin 12 will make me a Scotch drinker. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Matt, I'm the Whiskey Nerd, and like I said, this is the Tomatin 12 Highland Single Malt Whiskey, so let me get it into the glass and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. Now I have, as I said, I've been slacking, I think, on Scotch whiskies because I tend to focus on Irish whiskies. There's a lot of Scotch reviewers out there. I focus on the Irish whiskies, which has meant I kind of have focused in on drinking and enjoying Irish whiskey. So I'm trying to broaden my horizons with more of these kind of Scotch whiskies. A friend got me a bunch of small bottles, like 200ml bottles of different Scottish whiskies from different regions, so I can try out a couple of different whiskies, see what I like, see kind of what kind of Scottish whiskies I like. If you have any recommendations for whiskey I can try or I should try next, let me know down below. But for now, I'm going to work through those bottles that I was given. Like I said, this is a Highland whiskey, but apparently from a little bit of research I've done, it's more of like a Speyside whiskey. Apparently the Speyside region is a type of Highland. It's like a sub-region of the Highlands, but also from what I've seen and what I've tasted from Scottish whiskies, there's no, like, regionality is like a rule of thumb. It's a good idea for what a whiskey might taste like if it's from a region, but it's not necessarily guaranteed. Look, apparently Speyside whiskies, nice and soft and sweet, and Islay whiskies are much more peaty and heavy, but I've got the Brook Laddie Classic Laddie, and that is not a peated whiskey. That's from Islay, but it's just a nice, sweet, easygoing Scotch, so I'm not sure it's 100% guaranteed that where you buy the whiskey from, where the region it's from, is going to guarantee what it tastes like. But maybe you could educate me more. If you know more, let me know down below. But this is the Tomatin 12 from the Tomatin distillery. It is, as the name might imply, a 12-year-old single malt whiskey. It coming in at 43%, so it's pretty light in colour, so I don't think they probably didn't add any caramel colouring to it because it is quite kind of light gold in colour to it. It was probably chill filtered though, coming in at 43%, it's probably going to be chill filtered, and apparently it was aged in bourbon and sherry, but from the bit of research I've done online and the little bit of tasting I've given it already, is that there's maybe only a small amount of sherry in there because it's mostly leading with those bourbon notes. But again, if you know if the Tomatin have different whiskies in their brand that are more sherried, let me know down below, because that's pretty much all I know about this whiskey. So I'm just going to go in for the nose. Cheers. Quite sweet, caramel. It's got a good bit of malt in there, but it's very, very bourbony, very like bourbon single malt. Got this not quite butterscotch, not quite like, almost like a fudge, like a kind of a fudgy vanilla. That kind of sweetness is coming through here on the nose. There's also a lot of apple coming through, like apple and sweetness and sugar and that malted note. It reminds me of like an apple pie, or it reminds me actually of like an apple turnover. If you don't know what an apple turnover is, I'll put a picture up there. It's essentially pastry that's been a square of pastry that's been folded over to a triangle with a bunch of apple in it. So it's got this, like the pastry, the apple, a little bit of spice, and then a lot of sugar on top, and that's kind of the flavor I'm getting here. Very sweet, a little bit biscuity, a little bit kind of malty, but overall very sweet, very appley. There's a little bit of like floral note to it, like I wouldn't necessarily say apple blossoms, maybe like a kind of a floral citrus. I've had some kind of flavors before where it's like almost like orange bitters, where you get the orange and you get a little bit of like aromatics in with it too. It's that kind of floral kind of citrus note coming through. I think that's all I'm getting on the nose, so let's go in for the palate. Cheers. It's malty, there's a good bit of oak there, and a lot of that, like a lot more of that fudgy vanilla I was getting on the nose. Like that bourbon influence is super strong, I think, here on the whiskey. But again, that malt, it leads up front with it. It is very short, like that palate is essentially already gone. Like as soon as I tasted it, as soon as I swallowed it, it was gone. So I'm gonna go in again, hold on to it for a bit more, chew it for a bit more, and see if I can get kind of the sherry notes and that sherry influence coming through. Cheers. Okay, after I was chewing it for a bit, after I kind of let it sit in my mouth, I did get a bit of that sherry influence. I wouldn't say it's like berries and figs and those kind of stewed notes you sometimes get with sherry. It's more of like that, the kind of nuttiness, like almost like if you think of a hazelnut where it still has that skin on it, A little bit kind of bitter, a little bit tart almost, but nutty. And then again, just wrapped up in all that vanilla, all that kind of fudgy notes, a little bit of citrus, almost like the zest. In the nose was more floral, palate a little bit more zesty, a little bit more kind of tingly, that kind of citrusy note coming through. In terms of spice coming through, maybe like a little bit of white pepper, that's more into the finish now, but like very light in the spice, more leading up front with those softer, fruitier notes with a bit of nuttiness. So I'm gonna go in again. I'm gonna see what I can find in the finish. As I said, I can find that white pepper. Let me see if I can find anything else. Cheers. Okay, so on the finish, after a breath, the fruity notes are hanging on, well, the appley notes are hanging on, the kind of the sherry influence, that pretty much fades off quite quickly. The bit of oak, that malty note, that appley note is definitely hanging on. Those are like kind of the constant companions with this whiskey. You get a lot of those notes. As I'm breathing, I'm getting almost a little bit of popcorn. Like it's not sweet, it's not savory, it's not salty. It's that, if you ever just popped popcorn without any kind of flavoring on it, it's that kind of note. It's that kind of not bitter, but like that kind of like popcorn, like natural popcorn. That's kind of almost lingering note that's living on, as well as that bit of malt, touch of oak, and then the apple is gone, faded away as well. So it is quite a short whiskey on the finish. Before I give my final thoughts, if you're new here, scroll down, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button. I put out whiskey reviews on Wednesdays. I put out cocktail recipes featuring whiskey on Fridays. So if you want to see more, make sure you scroll down, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, and maybe let me know any scotches I should try in future. But as to whether or not I would buy a full-size bottle of this, I'm not sure. I don't think I would. I mean, I think I would like to try something else that's a bit more defined. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with this whiskey. I'm definitely going to drink the rest of this 200ml bottle, but I don't think I'd want a full-size bottle to myself because, like I said, there's nothing wrong with the whiskey, but there's nothing really right with the whiskey. There's nothing hugely special. There's no massive sweet bourbon influence. There's no lingering kind of spice. There's no rich sherry notes. It's just, if I were to think in my head what a decent, good quality, solid little Scotch whiskey is that's not smoky, this is probably where I'd lean. This is kind of what I would conjure in my head. Nothing wrong with that, but also nothing super special about it. So maybe I probably won't replace this, but I might get maybe something else from the Tomatin whiskey because, like I said, it's a decent whiskey, so I might try something else from them. But that's all there is to say about this whiskey, so I'm gonna enjoy this, I'm gonna enjoy the rest of this, and I'll see you next time. Sláinte.